Pokemon Legends ZA is a huge success, surprising no one. I've been talking about this for a long time, but there were a lot of people who were in denial about the reality of the situation. A lot of people were bending over backwards to try and gaslight you into thinking that the game failed and the game is like losing enthusiasm among fans and that there are people that are angry at the Pokemon company, when in reality, none of that is really true at all. And now, like, the argument has kind of metamorphized into dudes saying that this game sold slightly less than Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is just a giant cope at this point. But you know, this is actually in response to a very specific claim from a very specific person, right? Christopher Dring released a statement saying that Legend ZA did very poorly in the UK, and I immediately came out and denounced the UK as a video game market immediately because this is the giant cope that always happens whenever Nintendo releases anything is that some douchebag releases a statement saying, "Oh, well, this game didn't do as well in the UK as other regions." And this is meant to like associate the game with failure in the West. The idea that like, "Oh, well, if this game did badly in the UK, it's going to do bad in the US and all the other major markets." Hey, genius. Like the UK is a trash video game market in general. Everything does bad in the UK cuz all those chip eating like dentally depraved like retards do is sit around writing about football. Okay, they don't care about anything else. They don't think about anything else. They don't work. They don't have any national pride. They are just bottom of the barrel scum. They are the lowest of the low when it comes to the video game industry. And this is like the reality behind the situation. The reason why people constantly want to talk about the UK when it comes to video game sales and not France and not the US and certainly not Japan, the reason being that Nintendo traditionally has not done very well in the region. So, utilizing that is a go-to cope for gaming journalists to pretend that the new major Nintendo game is not doing well worldwide, when in reality, it is a giant cope. So this is not an isolated incident for Pokemon Legends ZA. This is not something that was like pulled out of a hat. This is the default cope every single time Nintendo releases anything is that, well, it didn't do well in the UK. Well, guess what? I don't care about what the UK does. I don't care about London. I don't care about this Islamic infested shithole. Okay? I never want to hear about UK sales ever again. And this is kind of my mindset going forward is that like I've talked about this in the past on streams, but it does need to be said every single time this narrative comes up that it does need to instantly be dismissed because the people who do this are completely out of touch with the actual industry. They have no idea how well this stuff does. They are completely unwilling to acknowledge the UK as being an anomaly when it comes to Nintendo's global success. And they are completely unwilling to acknowledge the reality of the success of these products worldwide. And they are doing everything they possibly can to legitimize the UK as like a relevant video game market specifically to push this weird anti-Nintendo agenda. And it does need to be called out more often. It is unbelievable how consistent this community has been in pushing this line of thinking that like that UK sales matter in any way, shape, or form, and yet people continue to eat it up because as long as it pushes the narrative that Nintendo is on the verge of failure, it will continue being used. I think the first step going forward when talking about this is that this really needs to be solidified as like a serious issue, because this is the go-to cope whenever someone in the UK, whether it's like Christopher Dring or like Liam Robertson or any one of these people, like whenever one of these people needs to downplay Nintendo, that's like the first thing they point to is just like, oh, but the UK sales, like nobody cares. Okay. Nobody cares about your backwards country. Nobody cares about how much a game sells there. Nobody cares about you. Nobody wants to hear your hot takes. Nobody cares. Okay, is my perspective on this. Like, and now, not only do I not care, I actively hate your country. I hate your people. I hate your ideology. I hate your attempts at continuing to promote this farce that Nintendo is on the verge of bankruptcy. I hate this idea that you have that your video game market is in some way like relevant on the global stage. Like nobody cares. And not only does nobody care, like everybody needs to know, full stop, not to listen to you or take anything you have to say seriously. Now, I'm American, right? So we already won a war, so we don't have to listen to you or anything you want ever again. But this needs to extend to more people. Like more people need to tell you to fuck off and never open your flappy lip ever again. You are completely despicable individuals, and I never want to hear you rant and rave about this nonsense ever again, because if you ended up talking about the best-selling games in the UK, you would end up talking about nothing but FIFA. You are a complete joke. No one plays video games there. No one buys anything. It is a completely dead market. Not because of Nintendo's inability to produce good games, but because the UK is just some shithole country that isn't cultured enough to enjoy Japanese entertainment. Okay. It says a lot more about the UK than it says about Nintendo. So, with all that being said, this is the reality of the situation. Like the idea that Pokemon Legends ZA wasn't doing well in the UK was just a giant cope from these limey losers who just can't wrap their heads around that nobody cares about what they say or do. Like they are so completely out of touch with reality. They're like the boomers on like the world stage. Like they really are sitting there like, telling people that like, well, back in the 1800s, we ruled the world. Like nobody cares. Okay? Like the UK is a declining empire. Your queen is dead. Your king is like, kneeling to global powers. Like you are complete frauds. Like the UK is not relevant in any way, shape, or form, and I never want to hear a word out of you ever again when it comes to video games.